So it's no surprise to say that The Flash is a disgusting pile of garbage. Yeah, I said it. I don't know if I'm going against the grain with this take, but according to everyone else that I talk to and see on Twitter, this is either the best movie of the year, which is wrong because Spider-Verse exists, or it's okay, which is also wrong. This movie did not make me feel good inside. All of the cameos were terrible and useless, and sometimes even were distasteful. And this movie made me hate Flash even more as a character because he's more annoying than he was in the studio cut of the Justice League. So yikes. And also he's a terrible person, but we'll get back to that later. In the beginning of the movie, we see that Barry is stuck at a restaurant getting a sandwich and it's taking too long and he's really annoyed by it and he's getting angry. It's not funny. It's gross. And then he gets a call from Alfred and there's a hospital that's being robbed or something. I don't know why a hospital's being robbed. I zoned out in the first 30 seconds of this movie, I'm sorry. Do hospitals have money or something? I don't even know. But anyway, Batman needs help, and he calls Barry. Then he changes into the Flash, and there's a bunch of teens fangirling over him, which was really weird. And he asks for one of their candy bars because he's hungry, and he has a calories watch. I'm not gonna get into why that's funny, but it's definitely funny for the wrong reasons. Anyway, he's still on call with Batman and Alfred, and then one of the teens throws the candy bar at him, and it hits him. Barry Allen, the fastest man alive, cannot react fast enough to a candy bar being thrown at a normal speed. This is when I automatically knew that this movie was going to be terrible. Anyway, then we see Batman on his bike, and it's terrible. His new costume is dreadfully bad. It looks like a Hasbro toy. Also, he doesn't have the voice modulator like he did in Dawn of Justice or in the Justice League, so another inconsistency there. You're welcome. Anyway, we follow Batman through the city trying to catch these people who robbed the hospital or something. He continues to do as much damage as he possibly can to the surrounding area. He goes through an oil tanker and makes it explode, which, by the way, he definitely killed at least 5 people in that explosion, I'd say. Maybe 2. Anyway, then Barry gets over to the hospital, cleaning up after Batman's mess. And then we get the sequence of the tower falling over and a bunch of babies are falling out and Flash has to save the babies. Oh man, this is where the CGI gets really rough because nothing looks real. He does an elaborate scheme to make the babies not die. Anyway, he shoves a baby into a microwave, and the idea of Ezra Miller shoving a baby into a microwave is kind of ironic to me. I think it's really, that's like comedy gold for all the wrong reasons. And during this, the music is just blaring, like, and it's just like, bro, calm down, please. The soundtrack for this movie is god-awful. Anyway, and then he saves all the babies, and there's a woman that's screaming because it's funny. And then we catch up with Batman, and he's hanging from a bridge. He has one of the criminals tied to him, and he needs help. And then we see Wonder Woman come in, the rapist. And wouldn't you know it, her theme plays. Stop. Please, stop. You did this in Justice League. You did this in Dawn of Justice. You even did a worse version of her theme for Zack Snyder's Justice League. You do not have to tell me that a character is appearing with their music every time, just hitting my head with a hammer. Anyway, and then she helps Batman with the lasso of truth, and then the lasso of truth continues to violate many human rights, like the right to remain silent, but that just doesn't exist with the lasso of truth, does it?
Oof. You're gorgeous. Fierce and strong and meant to.
I think that was beautiful.
You say a word about this, you'll meet every Prana I know.
Man, they really got to get rid of the lasso of truth, I'm going to be honest with you, because it violates so many moral values in society, doesn't it, if you think about it. Anyway, then we catch up to Barry at work. He's late. He works at a crime lab who gather information from a crime scene, and his friends are there. His friends seem like terrible people, pretty much. And then we're introduced to the love interest from the Snyder Cut, which makes it even worse because it just acknowledges that the Snyder Cut exists. And even in the movie, there's dialogue where it's pretty much directly referencing the event in Zack Snyder's Justice League, which not a good scene, by the way. It's not good. Anyway, Barry then continues to be a Redditor while talking to her, and none of this dialogue is human, and Barry continues to be completely insufferable. Then Barry goes home and he calls his father, and apparently there is a hearing tomorrow about his father's case to see whether or not he is guilty. And the exposition is just spoon-fed to you, talking about the date of the hearing, the time of the hearing, what they're wearing at the hearing, what their favorite color is. He even talks about the love interest, saying, hey, didn't you have a massive crush on her in high school? Shut up! We know that he has interest in her. We do not need it to be told to us with stupid dialogue over the phone, okay? Shut up, father. I'm glad you're in prison. Anyway, the Flash gets sad while looking at his childhood home and runs very fast, and apparently goes so far back that he goes back in time. Okay, that was not set clear that he was gonna do that. Anyway, Barry then goes back in time to prevent his mother from forgetting the tomatoes and completely ignores any of the advice that Batfleck gave him. So yeah, he continues to be a terrible character. We see that Barry has altered history so that his mother is alive and his father is not in prison, and he's having a meal with his family. And then, oh no, we see that there is a younger version of Barry outside of the house. Barry quickly goes out, grabs him, takes him up to his room, and talks it through with him. And by the way, this 18-year-old version of Barry acts like he's 7, and it's so irritating. And during this, we see blue lightning and yellow lightning for whether or not he's running or not, but there's no indication to show us what either of those colors mean, so yeah, not good. Anyway, then old Barry goes and brings young Barry to where they got the powers and gives him his powers. But it takes away old Barry's powers. How does it work? We don't know. Anyway, then the insufferable 18-year-old Barry goes and runs really fast everywhere. Except we see that his clothes burn, which is inconsistent with not only the Snyder Cut, but also inconsistent with this movie, because we saw earlier that normal Barry was completely fine running fast with his shirt on. So why is it different for this? We don't know, and it's not explained. So, good job, movie. Anyway, the next day, old Barry is telling 18-year-old Barry how the suit works and how it's in this ring and how you need to change into it while it's being exploded out of the ring. Which, by the way, I don't know if this is a thing that the comics do. I'm pretty sure it's a thing in the CW show, which I don't care about, and also I don't care if it happens in the comics. The ring suit is stupid. It's just a stupid idea. It's just so funny to me that they actually thought it was a cool idea to show the animation of the suit coming out of the ring, even though they know that their movie looks terrible. Don't show us the animation of it going up, please, because that just makes the movie look 10 times worse. Anyway, during this, we see the events of Man of Steel, and apparently Zod has shown up to this world and is about to conquer it. We see a news recording of the alien spaceship coming to Earth. So Barry finds the idea to go back to young Barry's apartment and look up to see if the Justice League exists. Wonder Woman is a no-shows, and she continues to be a terrible person. Aquaman doesn't exist because his dad apparently didn't fall in love with a sea woman or something, I don't know. Cyborg didn't exist because he didn't get his powers yet. And Superman is nowhere to be seen, which leaves them to go to Batman. Anyway, they go to Wayne Manor and try to investigate to find where Bruce is. I thought this was going to be where we see Supergirl because I saw some clips of her in Wayne Manor in the trailer, so I just assumed that she just would hide out here and do nothing because I just assume everyone in the DC universe is terrible people. So I don't know if that's a stretch or not to say that they're terrible people, but yeah. We see that Bruce is a homeless man inside his own house. Apparently Gotham doesn't need Bruce Wayne anymore as Batman because it's one of the safest places on Earth. Okay, I'm willing to accept that. It's just that I don't know if Bruce would just let himself go like this. Also, I've never seen the Keaton Batman movies and I don't care to, but if I did and I was a fan of Keaton Batman, oh boy would I be disappointed in this portrayal. Anyway, Barry continues to look up to see where Clark Kent would be and tries to find any UFO sightings from the pod that Clark Kent came from. And I don't even know how this happens, but apparently they fall asleep and then Batman finds the location of where a super person would be. I don't remember how it's done and I don't care to. I'm not watching this movie again. Anyway, they go to Russia and find this big ball, and that's where Supergirl is hiding, in this big ball. I'm sorry, but I just don't understand how the Russians were able to contain a Kryptonian, especially how they're depicted in Man of Steel. Also, they have a bunch of kryptonite, I'm assuming, because of the red lights inside of it. I'm assuming that's what that is. Yeah, okay. Anyway, they help Supergirl out because this is Supergirl in the big ball. And then during this, Barry gets shot. Barry Allen, the fastest man in the world, gets shot and doesn't react fast enough. okay. And we see this whole scene of 5 minutes going by that Barry is limping, even though we're shown that he has super fast healing abilities, so he should be healed by now, right? Or not, he's just gonna walk for 15 minutes, shot and bleeding out, and not gonna heal at any point. Okay. Also during this, Barry is yelling and screaming in pain. It's not funny, and I wish someone would end it by just shooting him in the head. That'd be really nice. And then we get this fight where Supergirl touches the sun and she finally gets her powers back and she fights all the Russians and it looks like a video game. Yep, no comment. Anyway, and then we get this whole scene of Supergirl and Barry talking to each other and he's explaining that humans can be good, and Sarah's like, but no, they're not good. They hurt me and put me in a big ball hanging, like a big ball hanging thing. And then he says, but humans can be good, and she kind of just says, okay, I believe you. And then she's a good guy now, apparently. Man, that was really easy. Imagine in The Boys, they just talked to Homelander for like 30 seconds and said, hey, we're good guys. And he was like, I see. I will be a better human being because of this. Imagine if that were possible. We also get this line where she talks about how great Krypton is and how it's about freedom and life, not destruction, which was just funny to me because we were shown in Man of Steel that Krypton is a bunch of communists. So I don't know where she got that idea from. I don't know, whatever, emo chick. Pop off, I guess. Then Barry is trying to get his powers back, so he makes a big machine with a chair that douses him in chemicals while getting struck by lightning. And it doesn't work the first time, and he's bleeding out everywhere, and it's a horrifying sight. Anyway, it doesn't work, and then Supergirl comes by and then picks him up and brings him into space to get electrocuted. Even though I thought that the whole point was for him to get electrocuted with the chemicals. So now Supergirl has brought him out of the chemicals and just thrown him into space to get electrocuted. How does this movie work? How? Anyway, and then he gets his powers back and we're good to go. He gets his suit back from Young Barry, and Young Barry makes his suit out of a bat suit, and it's the worst thing I've ever seen. Anyway, we get some pop music while they go to stop Zod. During this fight, Zod explains to Supergirl that they found Clark Kent's pod and found the baby, and they killed the baby for the information, which was bizarre. I'm not against the idea of that. It's just the way that it's portrayed to the audience. It just didn't have time to set in, and we're just kind of like, oh, Henry Cavill's dead. Okay, anyway. And then there's the scene where Supergirl's like, what did you do? While lighting her eyes on fire. Yeah, it's mid, probably the best moment in the movie, but it's meh. Anyway, and then Batman dies. Spoiler alert, Batman dies. He shoots missiles at the mothership. He sees that it has shields, and then he runs into it with his ship anyway, explodes, and dies. Because he doesn't understand the idea of a force field. Why are both versions of Batman in this movie absolutely terrible at thinking? And then it gets even worse when we see Supergirl die. Supergirl dies too. And what's even worse is we see that the blades that the Kryptonians have in the first Man of Steel movie, we see that those work on superpowered Kryptonians, which breaks both of these movies simultaneously. Because not once in that movie did they use the knife on Cavill. That's crazy, bro. So then Young Barry decides to go back in time to try to stop both Supergirl and Batman from dying. So they go a second time, and we see Batman die again and Supergirl die again. And the second time, Batman fights a Kryptonian and wins. Like, he actually stands a chance, which is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Let me get this straight up for you. Batman, normal human being who knows karate, is able to go up against a superpowered giant Kryptonian. What? How is this movie making sense? Anyway, and then we see that Barry and Barry go back in time again to try to stop Supergirl from dying because Supergirl's the key, but we see that Young Barry keeps going back and back and back and back to try to stop it, but it is a inevitable intersection. Why? Why is it inevitable? It doesn't make sense. You know, in the other multiverse movie that came out this year, Across the Spider-Verse, it actually gives an explanation to why these events need to happen and why canon events are canon events. You know, in this movie, they just say canon events exist and they don't say anything about it. Okay, my mind is breaking. And then we see Metal stuck inside Young Barry, and it's just so corny. Like, oh, now he has blades, but they're like stuck in his arms, and it's like, it's gross. gross. And then we see evil Barry, and that's just even funnier, because it's like, he's like, I've been doing this and I will fix the timeline. And it's like playing into the theme of like, oh, Barry's so quirky, he's so obsessed with math. He always knows that there's a solution to every problem. Shut up! And then old Barry attacks and tries to stab our Barry, normal Barry, but then young Barry comes in and gets stabbed and sacrifices his life. And let me tell you, I have never been so happy that an 18-year-old has died other than like right now. I was so glad when he died because I knew I didn't have to hear his insufferable voice ever again. And then it's revealed to us that this universe is inevitably going to die, and Barry just doesn't really feel the need to like apologize to anyone for it, because like, you gotta realize, man, it's also explained during this that it is inevitable in this universe that Zod wins and destroys the entire Earth, which this is Barry's fault. Because Barry was an idiot and thought he'd give his mother tomatoes, that messed up the timeline so bad that now Barry is responsible for the death of 7 billion people. Yeah, call me a communist, but I don't think Barry's a good guy anymore. Anyway, and then we see that Barry decides to go back in time. He runs backwards, which was funny to see. He runs backwards, deleting this entire timeline, killing 7 billion people, and decides, hey, I'm gonna go back in time, fix my mistake, and take the soup away from my mother, or the tomatoes, whatever you call it. And so he does, and it's this quote-unquote emotional scene where he talks to his mother for the last time. The movie really tries to make you care about Barry, but I'm sorry, this guy killed 7 billion people, so I'm glad his mother's dead? Is that controversial to say? Like, this guy killed 7 billion people. I want to hammer that in here. And you would think, hey, he goes back in time, at least he learned his lesson. Well, he decided that in that same place to move the tomatoes up to the top shelf. That'll be an issue later. Barry comes back to where the movie all started, and he sees that he's made it. He's finally home. So he goes to the hearing for his father's case. In the security cam footage, because he moved the tomatoes from the bottom shelf to the top shelf, his father looks up and it proves he is not guilty. And then everyone's happy and Barry walks outside and we get introduced to Batman. Batfleck's back, but it's not Batfleck, it's George Clooney. What? So not only did Barry kill 7 billion people, he just killed 14 billion people, because this Earth is probably gonna destroy itself at some point. And he didn't learn his lesson of not messing with time. So, I don't know, congratulations, the good guys didn't win in this movie. This movie does not have a happy ending. I do not feel good for Barry at all. I hope he dies. I want him to get stabbed in the chest and end his miserable, insufferable existence. This movie is not good. So overall, this movie is terrible. You know how people say that if you take any frame from Across the Spider-Verse, you could put it up on a wall as a painting because it's so beautiful? This movie is the opposite of that. Nothing in this movie looks good, the costume design especially. Like, look at Batman, he looks like a Hasbro toy. And then you have the Flash's costume, which is even worse than the Justice League one, which, that's an accomplishment. Also, the pattern on his suit is dumb and it looks really weird and leathery. I saw someone on Twitter argue, well, he's a forensic chemist and those shapes on his chest are made from forensic chemistry. Wow, bro, that's so cool. I don't care, it looks bad. It looks really bad, so I don't care. And then Keaton's Batman looks worse than the movies did, which that's surprising too. Supergirl's is meh because it's just Cavill's suit turned feminine. It's okay. It's an okay suit. I just don't really like it. The colors don't really pop out as much as I think they should. And the CGI is bad. That's a given. And even the lighting, which isn't really affected by CGI. So the director is terrible at getting a lighting person that knows what they're doing. Even the normal shots in normal real life just look absolutely terrible. The lighting is flat and bland, just like Zack Snyder's Justice League. And the cameos are incredibly distasteful, especially Christopher Reeve's Superman showing up. That I did not like it at all. Again, call me a communist, but I don't like the idea of bringing people back to life through CGI just for a cameo. There are slight exceptions to this rule, although they are still a bit weird. weird. Like, look at Tarkin from Rogue One. He at least looked good. For the technology of the time, he looked okay. Also, he had effect on the plot, and he was motivating a character to do things. He didn't just show up for no reason. Rogue One had something to do with the creation of the Death Star. And who are we seeing at the head of the Death Star in A New Hope? Grand Moff Tarkin. So it would just make sense for him to be there. Although I probably would have rather them just get a lookalike actor. That's more of a moral question, but at least he was used in the movie as a plot device to push character motivations. But in this movie, not only did they make Christopher Reeves look terrible, they only brought him in for clapping. That's all that is. Also, not to mention that they bring back George Reeves' Superman, the guy who literally ended his own life over the role of Superman. And the fact that they brought him back in using terrible CGI is just crazy to me, that they thought that was good on an ethical level. That alone takes 8 points off this movie. The director who made that decision, I do not like you as a person. You are not on my good list. Oh, and then there's Nicolas Cage's Superman, which who even wanted that? And he was fighting a spider or something. Who wants that? You know, instead of taking these cameos from projects that either have dead people in them or never came to fruition in the first place, maybe bring in people who, you know, people care about. Maybe bring in Henry Cavill Superman for once because we like Henry Cavill Superman. That's all we want. We don't want Nicolas Cage. We don't want to see Christopher Reeves again because his movies were already great. We don't want to see that. We just want to see Henry Cavill one last time, bro. Just give me Henry Cavill. And no, the terribly animated version of him in that little time sphere, that doesn't count. Okay? Give me Henry Cavill. That's all I want. Okay? Or even bring in cameos from other Flashes from other universes. Like bring in the one from the CW show. Do I like the CW show? No, not really. It had some good moments, but it overall wasn't good. But guess what? People like that show, so they probably want to see that version again. Don't they? But no, they just want to resurrect good actors to play roles again terribly because they don't know how to animate things and don't want to give the time and effort to actually respect the actor. This movie is absolutely atrocious. Ezra Miller as the Flash is something that I hope to never see again. Not only is Ezra Miller's voice just terrible and annoying overall, but the characterization of the Flash makes him a beyond terrible person. Like, the good guys don't win in the end, as I've already stated. That alternate universe dies, and everyone in it. Not only the 7 billion people that died at the hands of Zod, but also the infinite amount of life outside in the universe. And that's all Barry's fault. Batman dying twice, Supergirl dying twice, all of it is Barry's fault. So thanks, Barry. What a hero. And they try to do this inevitable incidents thing where it's like, oh, this universe is supposed to die. And it's really just a throwaway line to make it sound like it's impossible to stop this because it sounds cool, like inevitability. It's like Thanos, I am inevitable. Shut up, stop talking, I hate you. Also, again, to relate this to Across the Spider-Verse, at least Across the Spider-Verse gave the time and effort to explain that all of these events need to happen in all universes. But in this universe, it seems to be a case-by-case basis because in Man of Steel, we see that the Man of Steel wins in the end, and Zod is destroyed, and his army is destroyed. But in this one, it's saying that he can't be stopped. So I don't know what these canon events are in this movie, or inevitable intersections. I don't know what that's about, and I don't know the rules to it because it's very stupid. Sasha Calle as Supergirl was fine, I guess. She was just kind of there. I expected a lot more from her since she's the main part of the advertising for this movie, but that's mostly because nobody wants to see Ezra Miller. She kind of just showed up, said, humans are bad, then talked to for 30 seconds, and then she said, you know what, humans are kind of cool. And then she says, what did you do? And then she dies twice, and then we see her die, I think like 8 times, actually. I would say that I'd love to see more of her as Supergirl, but I do not want the DCU to be touched by this movie at all. So I'm sorry, Sasha, but I don't want to see your face ever again as Supergirl. I thought you did fine, but it's just a case of if they introduce you, they might try to connect it to this movie, which is something that they absolutely cannot do. Also, Michael Keaton's Batman. Man, dude, they really did him dirty. He's just an idiot throughout the entire movie. He says like quippy lines. Also, he says, do you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. He says that in the movie. I thought it was just a haha monkey clap moment for the trailer, but no, he says it in the movie, and it's the worst thing ever. And the funniest thing is when he dies the first time, because he's such an idiot. You can see him look at the ship and notice that there is a shield on it and sees that his missiles don't penetrate it. And then he's like, nah, man, I'm gonna just ram my ship in it because it's cool. Like, what are you doing? And also, this movie really tried to do this redemption arc for him, like saying, oh, Barry was the one that brought him back to the light. fight to be Batman again. And that theme just did not work at all because we're only shown one scene of him doing it in the first place. Yeah, this movie has no story, by the way. There's no character arcs in this movie at all, other than Supergirl saying, hey, humans are cool now. That's it. That's all this movie is. So overall, if I were to give this movie a rating, I would give it a 1 out of 10. I think this movie is a 1 out of 10. I would even go as far as to say that it's a 0.5 out of 10. I felt emotionally manipulated to like this movie, and I'm just not going to fall for it. Especially with Flash, like going back and seeing his mom. I'm sorry, Flash, but you're a terrible human being. You killed 7 billion people. I'm not going to sympathize with you at all. So yeah, I'll just give it a 0.5 out of 10. That's a yikes in terms of scale. So yeah, I would go far and say that I'd rather watch Man of Steel, BVS, or Justice League rather than this pile of just garbage. So yeah, bad movie. I highly recommend you don't watch it. Goodbye.